Hey, I'm Laura Mannino, and Keith, thank you so much for having me. You're an inspiration, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. And thank you so much for giving me a platform to let your viewers know what I'm up to and my work. Thanks so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Keith Andrew Network. I am your host, Keith Andrew, and this is episode 560. I am the one and only Keith Andrew. Along here is the beautiful and talented Laura Mannino. I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. The honor's all mine. For people who want to know what my talk show is about, the whole point of my talk show is to show people that even with having a learning disability, I can still amount to something. And at the same time, I'm able to turn myself into an example for people out there dealing with any types of learning disabilities and disabilities to never give up and prove people wrong. Prove to them that labels do not dictate who you are and who you're going to be. Is to prove to them to amount to something. So hashtag break the labels. With that being said, a half hour, 33 minutes of your time. Say anything you want, talk about whatever you want. Freedom of speech, self-expression. It's uncensored. I want you to express yourself. You puss on me, I puss back. Let's make it a lot of fun.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be here.
No, absolutely. Don't mind me, I haven't done my interviews as of late because I've been focusing on work. So this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, so I just need to get into the whole mindset.
No, I understand. You're doing great.
Well, I appreciate it. First question I was going to ask you is, I saw that you moved from White Plains to LA. So
Yeah.
what made you want to make the transition?
Sure. Well, I actually, I grew up in White Plains my entire life, and I did 2 years of college at SUNY Binghamton, and then transferred to NYU, and I lived in New York City for almost about 10 years, mostly in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And and I went to NYU for acting and theater, and while in New York, I was doing that as well as stand-up comedy. And I don't know, I was really ready for a change. I was doing a lot of shows at bars, and I just kept thinking, you know what, I could easily just be doing this for the rest of my life. And I just got married, and it was, I don't know, I think I was just ready for a change. New York City is hard. I think you have to be really young or really rich, and when you are no longer either, or have never been either, it gets hard. So I just felt like I was going to regret it if I didn't make the move. So I packed up and moved to LA almost 10 years ago.
Any regrets?
I don't. You know, it's interesting. I think there's always a grass is always greener situation. So in New York, everybody who particularly works in show business thinks everything is happening in LA. And for the most part, the industry is here in LA. But then when you're here and you see so many fabulous shows and fantastic shows and great comedy getting done in New York, I have always wondered, oh, maybe I should have stuck in there. But I don't have any regrets, and I do love the lifestyle here, and I think New Yorkers don't give Angelinos enough credit. I think they assume that we're all sort of silly and frivolous and flaky, and I have found some really amazing, grounded, focused, driven, incredibly smart collection of folks out here.
No, absolutely. Now, the next question I was going to ask you, now the ask you the easy ones and go to the hard-hitting ones.
Oh, good. I can't wait for the hard ones.
When you went to high school and college, let me rephrase that. When you were in college, were you a study nerd or party animal? And when you were in high school, did you do any sports?
I was a total theater nerd in high school. I didn't do any sports. I got that all in my system in middle school and realized I was terrible at everything. So I really nerded out in theater in high school. And then when I was in college, also a theater nerd. If I was at all a partier, I was doing it in probably the nerdiest way possible. Probably singing a lot of show tunes after, at theater parties.
I know a lot of people who like show tunes.
Yeah.
Now, the next question I was going to ask you was, what about some sports?
Oh, what did I do when I grew up? I was on swim team, and I think how I treated swim team, I realize, is a trend in my life. I was always the first in the water. Rarely complained how cold it was, but I was never necessarily the best or the fastest. And I think that's sort of my trend. I think that's my pattern. I'm the first in. I might not be the best, but I have no problem diving in. So I really enjoyed swim team. I played soccer. I was terrible. I played softball. I was fine. For some reason, I was put on third base as a left-hander, which I think also didn't do me much. Didn't really serve me well.
What about, let's see, what about the swim team that you missed, and did he ever cause any pile-ups or anything, or crash into each other?
Oh, no, I don't think I caused any pile-ups. I just don't think I ever won any races during competitions. But I loved it, you don't sweat, which is great. So that's fun. It's a full body workout. You're in a pool, which I love. Now, I still love being in a pool, but right now I'd much rather be in a pool with a drink, not particularly exerting myself.
That's true. My last easy question for you is, a lot of people think I'm a loser for this, but I love this stuff. Did you ever get the chance to do one of those human pyramids, or not into the human pyramid stuff?
Have I ever done a human pyramid? I haven't, but I've seen human pyramids. I was in Barcelona during that festival of human castles. Do you know what?
Oh, the human towers.
Yeah. I was in Barcelona about, what was it? Gosh, probably 6 years ago. And we were just walking around in Barcelona, and then we just stopped, and we just saw this amazing, and we had no idea that this was a huge festival day. And it was just amazing to see these folks. It was amazing to see, I'm now a parent, and we are always worried about safety with our kids. These little kids who were just climbing up all of these people to be on the top of a castle, a very tall, very tenuous human castle. It was terrifying, but also incredibly impressive, and must be fun to practice and to be part of a team. It was really amazing. I was so thrilled to have seen that.
I always wanted to do one. I'm a loser.
You're not a loser. I feel like that should be a thing here. I think America is really good at dumb hobbies. So I'm shocked that there isn't a human castle team. I mean, if we're competitive eating, you would think that we would also do this thing. So maybe you should start it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It's funny, I did message to one of the people who do the human towers. It's like, oh, I want to do one. I want to be on the very top.
Yeah.
I only want to do one just to make it fall.
Right. I mean, get loads of insurance. Have a lot of liability forms. Get a lot of padding. And try it out.
Now, what about those normal human pyramids? Would you ever be interested in doing any, or not really?
Well, no, what's a normal human pyramid? Like cheerleading, or?
Well, a lot of people refer to cheerleading. But basically, it's 3 on the bottom, 2 and 1.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. It has a lot of my anxieties. I'm not a fan of heights. I'm not a fan of pain. I'm not a fan of falling. So I don't think I would be good on any of those levels.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it.
Yeah, that's true.
Actually, I do want to ask you 2 questions about it. If you had to do one, would you do a big one or a small one? And would you use the side-by-side or the stack? Which one's your favorite?
Wait, I think I would definitely do a small one. And what was your second option?
Would you do the side-by-side or the stack?
Oh. What's a side-by-side?
That's where it's 3 people, then 2 and 1, and the stack is just basically you're just going up.
Oh, I think I would do a pyramid, a 3 and a 2. I would try to go for as much structural support as possible.
Like I said, I'm a loser. I love that stuff.
Oh, that's fun. That's cool.
Now, the next one I was going to ask you is, like I said, we're going to go to the hard-hitting ones. I asked you all the easy and the fun stuff. Now we're going to go to the serious stuff.
Okay, I'm
The,
ready.
the first one I saw that you were in charge. Actually, I will say this one to the very end. I saw that you were a head writer, script writer, and actor. Now, the first one I'm going to ask you is about who influenced you to become a head writer and script writer.
Oh, it's so interesting. Ever since, thinking about those high school days, I know a lot of kids who do theater in high school, you audition and then you get a role and you're in it. And I did a lot of that, but also I was part of a lot of theater programs on the weekend where we were writing our own plays and then putting them on. And so really from the get-go, I have always fused performing and writing have just sort of been synonymous for me, and they've always worked together. And when I was at NYU, I studied at the Atlantic Theater Company Acting School, which was started by a playwright named David Mamet, and the goal or the focus there was that actors are in service of the writing, and we did a lot of script analysis work. And so even though I wasn't writing, it really helped me dig deeper into what is effective storytelling, and I was really able to hone storytelling instincts. And then from there I got really involved and just started doing stand-up, because I loved the idea that I didn't have to wait around for someone to cast me or pick me. I could just go and be in front of an audience right away. And with that, as a stand-up, you are not only just the performer, but you are also the writer and the director. And so writing and acting have just always been something that have worked together. And then when I moved here in LA, I thought I was going to just learn the ropes of the business as predominantly an actor. And I, went on a ton of auditions and a lot of terrible commercial auditions and took a lot of classes. And I was doing stand-up still. But I don't know. It's just something about it didn't feel satisfying to me for some reason to just be an actor. And there are so many people who do find that deeply satisfying and are able to move forward in their careers, but they're doing far deeper and more nuanced work where acting is really a satisfying artistic experience. But for the most part, I have found myself, I was only just sort of a prop with a pulse. And I just didn't find that creatively and artistically fulfilling. So I began to really turn my attention to writing, and I began to start taking sketch writing classes at UCB while I was doing improv, and from there, I wrote a short film for myself when I first moved to LA to be a kind of calling card for who I am as an actor. And from there, I began to start writing a web series and then a pilot and then more pilots. And I have realized that acting and performing will always be tools in my toolbox, but I think I'm going to make strides in this industry and as an artist and as a creative professional, as a writer, creating worlds and telling stories with my point of view.
No, absolutely. Now, the next question I was going to ask you, I would love to work with you. Do you think my show would benefit from like a head writer and a script writer?
Well, do you have, it seems like you're mostly focusing on interviews. Do you like watching a lot of late night shows where the hosts do segments or games? Is that something that you like?
Absolutely. I am a big fan of Bill Maher.
Oh, okay, Bill Maher. Oh, cool. Oh, great. So what Bill does is that he has this monologue in the beginning, and then usually he'll have a little bit of like a bit in the middle. What's his bit? Like, I don't know this for certain, but I just know it's true. And then I'll have new rules at the end that'll go into some like scripted commentary. So I think that's a really great example of, an interview show that is peppered with scripted segments. So I think that if you ever wanted to do something like that, where you did, there's some boundaries because these are Skype interviews and you don't have your guests in the studio. But I think that if you wanted to do a scripted monologue on your own or do a segment or a bit on your own and then edit it together or splice it in with an interview, or we can do the bit together during an interview. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I think it would be, I've submitted packets and I've worked on a talk show for MTV. That didn't happen, but I think interview shows are really great, and I think it's when you do those segments, it's a great way to show the personality of the host. Because I think your job is always so selfless that you're always worried about your guest and you want your guest to look good, and it's mostly your guest who's rambling. But it'd be great for your audience to see who you are and what drives you and what's your personality and what's your point of view. So yeah, I think you can do stuff like that.
No, absolutely. We can always talk about that off the air.
Sure.
Now, the next question I was going to ask you is actually one more question on the subject. How many years have you been a head writer and script writer? And I'm going to add a little more to that.
Oh, sure.
How many years have you been a head writer and script writer? And would you ever be interested in doing a script or a gig or whatever you want to call it for people with disabilities?
Yes and yes. So I have I just started a job where I've been writing as considered a head writer for a scripted podcast network. So really just a few months now. But I have also been a creative and an executive producer of a web series for a digital channel. I would say overall I've been working as a writer for actually not really very long. I would say for the last 5 years. But I've always have been writing, and this is really just the first stretch of time that I have been employed as a writer, which I'm very happy about. I absolutely agree that I think we're going through a thing right now in both society and our industry where we're realizing how underserved and how many stories of folks we don't see, and we have a real diversity drought. And when you have people playing roles of races that they as actors aren't, that's a big problem. And I think we are recognizing that there's a lack of diversity for roles for women, for people of color, and I do think this next arena is those with the disabilities and challenges. I think now shows with like Speechless and Atypical are really leading the charge, but I don't think we see enough of it. So I think we have to keep pushing. And I just wrote a pilot with, and one of the roles is a woman with Down syndrome. And I think that we, as writers and creators, we have to, it might be a little ham-fisted at first, and I think we have to just try to get out of our comfort level, and it might be forced a little bit, but we have to do it. And I think what more studios can do is really seek out writers who have a particular point of view and can tell this story, because I think there's an audience out there, and we can't underestimate the power of what it feels like to watch people just like you on screen telling your stories. It's incredibly powerful, and it makes everyone feel less alone, and it makes you feel like you count and you are part of society. You are not just this anomaly. So we need more of that, and I think that's why your talk show is really inspiring.
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, we can always talk off the air about ideas.
Great.
And now everyone else got to ask you is, who influenced you to become an actor, and have you ever worked with actors with disabilities?
Oh, My first time acting was actually in fourth grade. I was in a class where every year this teacher puts on a very abridged Shakespeare play, like takes Shakespeare, all 5 acts or whatever, and distills it to 40 minutes for fourth graders to do. And we did Twelfth Night, and I played Maria, and I don't know what it was, but it just clicked, and I loved it. I loved performing. I loved putting a story together. I think I always loved playing pretend. I loved story time was always my favorite time in school. I think I learned by story. You know, I can never remember a phone number randomly, but I can always remember that you wore, you know, that yellow dress in that restaurant where that guy spilled the spaghetti and all of this happened, but I'll never remember the name of the restaurant. So I learn with stories. I remember things by stories. So I think that doing that play, that it clicked that this is what I'm meant to do, and I don't know where yet. Have I worked? Oh yes, I had a pilot reading and 2 weeks ago, and we had found an actor who with Down syndrome to play that role of that character who has Down. And she was amazing and so wonderful to work with and so helpful. And it was really great that I found this agent who represents other folks with various disabilities and challenges. And she is absolutely on my short list of people to always think about and to always write for. And I'm so glad it took a little of effort to find somebody, but I think it's worth it. And I think we have to do that. And I think the easiest thing to do is just to have not found somebody who has Down syndrome and ask an actor to play that role who doesn't have that. So I think for those of us who don't have disabilities, we have to just work a little bit harder to reach out to that community if it's not immediately available to you.
No, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I try to turn myself into an inspiration. A lot of people say I am. A lot of people say I'm not. But, you're not going to please everybody. Right. Absolutely. Why wouldn't people not think you're an inspiration? Because you don't see a disability. I'm not missing an arm. I'm not in a wheelchair. I do have a speech impediment. I blink a lot, trying to hide that. That's part of my stigmatism. It's, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It's like a big elephant in the room. That it's there, but you can't. People want to see it. They want to, tuss it. They want to, poke the bear or whatever, what they want to do. Right. Yeah, I think that's unfair to you. That's unfair, I could imagine your community, like any community, you're not a monolith. You're not just one type. And I think that it's really important, particularly for those of us, those who who don't have a challenge or dealing with a disability. We need to understand and be empathetic that there's not just one type. And the way to do that is just to continue to show yourself and be out there and to prove people wrong. No, it's funny. That's my motto. Never give up and prove people wrong. Yeah. It's one of my favorite wrestlers. A lot of people give me shit about it. I like Chris Benoit. As a human being, I never met him. I'm not going to say anything bad. But as a professional athlete, Chris Benoit will always be one of my favorites. And he always says, just prove me wrong. Yeah. And I guess that's where I got it. I'll never give up and prove people wrong. Right. Absolutely. Good for you. Now, let's see how long we have on the timer. We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to ask you 2 more subjects. One about social media. Can social media make you or break you? And about the NRA. Oh, okay, great.
Vanessa Lina. Adrian Monroe. I'm Cynthia Bastinet. I'm Sonia Fisher. This is Shane Smith. My name is Alexandra Bowie. This is Amelia Clover. Hi, I'm Amy Linden.
Hi, I'm Anita Pope Brown.
Meg Green.
Hi, my name is Asata Caldwell. Hi, everybody, I'm Brooke.
Hi, I'm Brinford. Hi, I'm Casey Dunn.
Hi, it's Cassandra Kavinsky.
Hi, I'm Christina Briza.
I'm Cindy Hogan. I'm Courtney Sinella.
Hi, I'm Daisy.
My name is Deborah Jane East.
Hi, my name is Danielle Marcia.
Hi, everyone, I'm Victoria London.
Hi, I'm Heather Crona.
Hi, I'm Heather Callahan Stevens.
Hi, I'm J. Nicole Ralph.
My name is Jamie Patrol.
My name is Turi.
My name is Julia Brankovich.
Kathleen Wills.
Kimberly Amato.
Hi, my name is Laura Putton.
Hi, I'm Laura Chakanis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Damas.
This is Michelle Mupo, a.k.a. Fuchsia.
I'm Rachel Rivera.
Hi, my name is Sarah Joy Mount.
Hi, I'm Susan Brender.
Hi, everyone. This is Venus Leone.
Hi, I'm Showtana.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Herrera, and I was just on the Keith Andrew Network. It was tons of fun. We used up all our time and then some. I really recommend this show, and try to be a guest on Keith's show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Keith Andrew, and this is episode 560. That is right after 5.5 years. This is episode 560. And now, with that being said, I'm here with Laura Mannino. I do apologize for mispronouncing your name earlier. I have it on text-to-speech, so I type into my phone, and my phone pronounces it for me. I'm like, well, if that's how it's pronounced, I go with it. And you told me during the break, it's like, that's not how it is. So I'm like,
right. It's really okay. I really totally understand. There's a lot of people. It's hard. It's a hard name anyway. And yes, I mispronounce names all the time, so I'm never offended.
So the first question I was going to ask you is, you have your own little fan page on Twitter, and I did ask you to follow me if that's a possibility. Yeah. And it's about boycott the NRA.
Yeah, I, in addition to being a writer, I, on my off time of that, I have a anti-gun lobby grassroots organization called Train the NRA. We've been around for the past year. I have been involved in gun reform for about 2 years now. I've been a member of Moms Demand Action. And after the shooting in Las Vegas this time last year, we wanted to find a way of what other angle can we go against the NRA that maybe we haven't seen yet. And we were really dismayed to see that so many corporations have affiliations with the NRA, and many say that the NRA is a fringe group. Well, I don't know, FedEx and Delta or Wyndham or a lot of these organizations or companies feel differently. And so what we set out to do was to put pressure on these companies to drop their affiliation with the NRA, because by partnering with the NRA, you are therefore endorsing their divisive lobbying agenda and preventing really common sense gun reform legislation that could save lives. And I feel like you are the company that you keep. And if your corporate values are transparency and openness and family, well, that is not what the NRA represents. So we, after the shooting in Parkland, we had a rally here in Los Angeles with about 500 people, and then on Twitter, the boycott NRA movement exploded, and we already had all of that ready to go, and we rolled with it. And since then, over 30 companies have left the NRA, and most recently FedEx. FedEx was not only giving a discount to NRA members, it was also giving a sort of secret discounted shipping option to the gun industry and the NRA. So the three things that we do is that we boycott the NRA's corporate partners, we divest from the gun industry, and we vote out the politicians the gun lobby pays off. And I think we've hit all of those this past year, particularly with this election. I believe over 27 members of Congress who receive NRA contributions have lost their job because we all voted, and I think that's really powerful. And I'm really proud of our work, and I'm really proud of the work of the students of Parkland and Moms Demand Action and Brady and all of these groups that have really worked really hard to push the NRA out of Congress this election.
No, I agree. The NRA has no reason to have that much power, number one, and should be pushed out of Congress. However, I will never ever have anything to do with the NRA. But with that being said, I do support the Second Amendment. And with that being said, I do support, and only in this defense, and I said it for all my hundreds of interviews, I support killing only, alright, only in self-defense.
Yeah, yes.
So,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Here's the interesting thing. The Second Amendment comes up a lot, and the NRA, I also believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the Constitution. And that's why I have a problem that the NRA uses the Constitution as a marketing scheme to continue to sell more products, particularly weapons of war that doesn't belong in civilized society. We don't need an AR-15 to defend your house. I understand that we have a right to own a gun. I also think that to own a gun, it should be the hardest thing you have to do and have the privilege to do. Guns, you can take a life in a second. And I think to have that in your hands and to be empowered with that, it should be the hardest thing that you have to do to train for and to maintain that right. I would also say that only having a gun doesn't mean you know what to do with a gun. And I think what the NRA and gun culture makes us believe that once you have a gun, you'll be able to effectively defend yourself. And the NRA will say the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, a lot of times, that good guy is in the dark, can't see, can't hear, is overstimulated, is afraid, has implicit bias, is drunk, isn't trained well, and in those situations, more guns doesn't save lives, but can possibly lose more lives. So that is my feeling. I don't think it has to be an either or thing. I don't think you should have to say to be against the gun lobby doesn't mean you're against the Second Amendment, but I am against what the NRA has done and used the Second Amendment to sell more product. And they've only started really doing that these last 20 years or so. And I also say to my gun reform friends that repealing the Second Amendment isn't going to solve this problem, because the NRA will find another thing to make people feel afraid, and will find another marketing scheme, and it will still not take care of the fact that we have so many guns out on the streets. And I think that's what that's the problem in this country. I don't think we have a mental illness problem. I think we have a too many guns problem.
No, I agree with you. And I said it a while ago. Convicts, criminals, rapists and murderers, illegal immigrants, terrorists, and people with special needs should all be banned from having firearms. Hey, you say, well, Keith, you're special needs, so you want a gun? No, I don't want a freaking gun. You know, because that's only asking for problems. Give me a paintball gun. I'd be happy with that. Right. But if you take the guns out of the hands of people who are bizarre or mentally disturbed, or who already have a history of mental illness, you're cutting it in half. But that's the other thing where this guy could be normal, but he can snap like that. That's the other problem. Yeah. So he can have it both ways.
Right. Yeah, guns present a permanent solution to a temporary problem. A few statistics that maybe, or just some information that maybe your viewers would like to know is that in this country, we pay attention to gun violence when there's only a mass shooting, and unfortunately, there's been a lot of mass shootings this year. I think a record amount of mass shootings. But every single day, mass shooting aside, over 300 people every single day on average are shot. Over 90 of them die. 7 of them are children, and 50 of those 90 deaths are results from suicide. And I think if we talk about universal background checks, which has the most bipartisan support to close loopholes for gun sales at gun shows or online sales, that's incredibly effective, but also mandatory waiting periods. If we mandate 3, or I would say even 7 more days to get that gun, you are absolutely going to reduce the amount of suicides and impulsive shootings, particularly in domestic abuse situations. An interesting thing, though, about mass shootings is that a lot of these folks that we discover have had a lot of red flags. And we're now seeing what we can do to pass red flag laws, and we have to start asking questions of those who present volatile, violent behavior if they own guns, and if they own guns, should they continue to own guns. There was a lot of shooting happened not that far from me last week in Thousand Oaks at the Borderline Bar and Grill, and it's now coming out that this particular person has had a pattern of erratic behavior, and when the police came to his home, though he was fine enough or cleared enough to not necessarily be committed, what maybe could have saved that situation is that California recently passed a gun violence restraining order, which means that law enforcement and family members can file a petition and petition the judge to temporarily take guns, magazines, and ammo away from somebody whom they deem to be a harm to themselves or to others. California is only one of 5 states that has this law. I'm not sure if New York has it. I can't remember offhand. But I think it's really important that we know about this. A lot of law enforcement doesn't know about this law. A lot of family just civilians don't know. So there are laws that could help this, but we have to keep going. Another final thing I would say is that list you mentioned, I understand it, but also there's situations in mass shootings where the people are legal citizens. They haven't had maybe necessarily criminal history, or they have had erratic behavior, but nothing that put them in a system, and they still had access to a weapon to once again have a permanent solution to a very temporary problem. And I would just say that we don't have a mental illness problem in this country. I don't think we are more mentally ill in this country than any other countries. I just think we have a too many guns problem in this country.
No, absolutely. Now it's time for the bonus round. I gave you an extra 5 minutes because we're now off the air.
Oh, okay.
We're going to continue recording. So my last thing I'm going to talk to you in during the bonus round is social media. How do you feel about social media, and can social media make you or break you? With everything you accomplish in your life, how do you feel about it?
I don't think social media would either make me or break me. I think it's an outlet for me to get my message and my voice. It's been my comedy notebook. Twitter has sort of been my comedy notebook. It has been my way to get information about how I feel about gun violence. I wish I was I missed the boat. There's so many people who found their way making millions of dollars on social media. But I would love to see, for those who are influencers, I really think it would be great if we could better use their influence to get some really strong messages across about things like gun violence prevention or voting or racial and social justice. So I think if social media has helped make you, then I hope I invite every one of those folks to also find a way how to use their platform for good and to help others.
No, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, next one I was going to ask you is, what were some of the sites that actually helped you get to where you are today? And any sites you would recommend?
In terms of professional sites?
Yes.
Do I have any?
I know there's Facebook, LinkedIn. For me, it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I used to use Stage 32. But is there anything else that you would say?
I would Oh, sure. Yeah, I would say I think Twitter has been the most effective for me. I think it's a great source of information, and I think it has been the platform I've been able to utilize the best for both my activism and my writing and comedy.
All right. Now, with the last 2 minutes left, I'm going to pass it over to you. Was there anything you wanted to talk about? Anything you wanted to share? This is your time.
Well, I wanted to, let's see if I can briefly say, well, I want to say that I was really inspired by you. You know, I was really pleasantly surprised when you called me out of the blue. We haven't talked before, and you so clearly laid out your ask. You clearly told me what you wanted and what you're asking me to do and who you are. And I'm saying that not in a way where I'm surprised because of your particular challenge or disability. I was surprised because so many folks, and myself including, who aren't dealing with a challenge or a disability can't do that. I'm in so many Facebook groups with other women and moms and we're all talking about how, like, oh, I really want this opportunity, but I'm afraid to ask, and what if somebody hates me, or if I put them on the spot, or is that so rude of me? And we're always having this crisis in confidence, and I think it's so empowering and so inspiring to meet somebody who just so confidently says, this is who I am, this is what I'm asking you, this is what I want, in a really magnanimous, generous, but clear way. And I think that's really powerful, and that's really difficult to say no to, and I really you should be an inspiration and a role model for everybody else who's so afraid to ask for what they want because they don't think they're good enough. And it's amazing how many people who maybe aren't dealing with challenges still feel that way, and we shouldn't. And the only way you can do it is just get over that hump and be brave like you are.
No, I appreciate it. Now, I do have a couple questions for you off the air. And the first one that I asked you, we're wrapping up, is how can people follow you on social media? Are you on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn?
Sure. Yes, you can find me on all of those. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Laura Mannino. You can also find Drain the NRA on Twitter and Instagram at Drain the NRA. You could find Drain the NRA's Facebook page at Drain NRA Blood Money. My website is lauramannino.com, and there's drainthenra.com, and you can also find me on LinkedIn.
No, absolutely. And my last question for you is, this is how we're going to start the interview when the video plays.
Oh, okay.
When I first approached you to be a guest on my talk show, what was your first honest reaction? And after being a guest, how do you feel now? And would you recommend it to your friends and family?
When you first called me, at first I got a little scared that it was a prank because I have gotten some mean phone calls or offers from gun rights folks or people who don't really like what I'm doing with the NRA, and so I have been feeling a little protective, and so I was a little surprised when you found my phone number. I got a little nervous, but then when I learned more, I did take a moment. I'm like, oh, is this guy for real? Does he really have a talk show? And then when I looked you up and I saw, wow, he legitimately does. I was excited to speak with you, and now I'm really glad that we had a chance to talk, and I was really glad to meet you, and thank you for giving me a platform to let your audience know about who I am and my work and what I do, and I'm always appreciative when anyone wants to hear me run my mouth about stuff.
No, absolutely. Hey, you're supporting a good cause. It's a great message, and you're making a new friend out of it. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, win-wins.
So with that being said, stay tuned. I have a couple questions for you off the air. While wrapping up, it was a real honor and privilege having you as a guest, and I'm looking forward to part 2 down the road.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. So great to meet you, Keith. Thank you.